Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. They think you're just sitting by the beach with your coffee and your MacBook out, typing away and making loads of money. I can tell you that couldn't be further from the truth. Everyone talks about starting a business overseas and living the good life, but very few mention the obstacles. I've done it multiple times. I've worked with multiple businesses. Some of them I've closed down the business. Here's what the lawyers, the YouTubers, and the government websites won't tell you. Hi, this is Jeremy. At Millionaire Migrant, we help entrepreneurs, investors, digital nomads, high net worth individuals. We help all of these people to obtain citizenship, residency, tax, corporate structures, foundations, trusts, international real estate investing, you name it. I started one business, first time lucky, it got really big, and then I started to diversify into other businesses. But I have also been guiding my clients through setting up businesses overseas because I have set up more than 200 businesses. I still have myself around 10, 11 companies. But essentially, I'm there to guide people from avoiding a costly mistake and turning it into a successful offshore strategy. So if you're serious about building globally, about scaling globally, this is the video that you need to be watching. First things first, you need to choose the right jurisdiction. Today, we're going to talk about the United Arab Emirates. The reason we're talking about that is because thousands and thousands of people are setting up businesses here. I mean, it's really incredible the growth that this country has seen over the last few years, and has been getting greater and greater by volume, probably, well, definitely since COVID, but even before that, it was starting to pick up. And this is going to continue for many, many years. So what happens is when you want to set up a business in the UAE, the main differentiator is going to be the activity that you're going to be in. Because if you're doing something that is tangible, that involves the local population, something that's a physical, so I'm talking about a real estate license, I'm talking about healthcare, I'm talking about restaurants, there is an exchange of tangible goods going on there, that you would need to have an onshore business. So that means you can't do a free zone business. Free zones are designed to be purely B2B consultancy and not interacting with the local population. So you want to be advising people, you consultancy, marketing, strategic advice. You can also move into other free zones such as the DIFC, which is purely financial, the DMCC, which is Dubai Multi-Commodity Center, which is, again, transactional, which is precious metals and other such resources. But you've got now, I mean, when I used to set up a lot of businesses, I do a lot less now, I do more strategic, but when I used to do a lot in the UAE, some people would go to Fujairah, Ras Al Khaimah, Sharjah now has some popular free zone options. There's about 50 plus different free zones, and they all vary. Some of the ones that are most popular would be probably Dubai World Trade Center or Dubai World, which is the new airport area. But for me, when I started my business, I did it onshore. I mean, there wasn't too much of a reason, pro or con. I still remember being down at the government department office and getting the license. I think one of the key differentiators, which is still a case today, is the cost of the visas. I would say that is the main differentiator, because if you're someone who can do it onshore, offshore, such as my business, which would be, let's say, document clearing services or immigration services, I can choose. So I think there wasn't any reason at the time, there wasn't any difference, but I know a lot of companies in my space, they would have a free zone license. But I think the main difference is that if you go in a free zone, particularly in one such as DMCC, which is JLT, there your visas cost a lot more. And I know this because I also have another company that is in that free zone. So that's probably the two main reasons: cost of the visas and the activity, whether you're really dealing with something tangible in the UAE. One thing to bear in mind is that with the visas, this is restricted largely by the size of the office. And what happens is that the greater that when you get your trade license, you'll have to have an address. This is really important. This is also the reason why a lot of business centers and co-working locations have grown up. It's because offices have seen a huge demand. That's why I'm very fortunate that I made the decision to invest in the commercial space a few years ago when nobody was really talking about it. But essentially, people need space so that they can get more visas, because essentially companies largely in a jurisdiction like the UAE, which is doing very well, will need more space, and therefore they'll need more visas. If the economic climate should change and people downsize, then obviously it starts to go in the different direction where people need less space and less visas. When I started that business, I had a local sponsor. But what has happened is since then, the Dubai government has changed the criteria for you to be compelled to have a local sponsor. Now, it depends on the business you're doing, but let's say you want to do something where you need to get a bit of clout, then having a local sponsor, a powerful local sponsor, is probably going to help your business. There'll be a cost involved. Nobody works for free. But if you do that, I've seen a lot of people use a local sponsor because not just because it was tangible, but because that person is going to open doors for them, and that person will give you a lot of clout and support. And sometimes I've noticed it, they'll bring a lot of business to your table as well. So that's something that works really well. For me, I had a fantastic local partner. She was amazing. And in the end, when it got to the point that I didn't really need her anymore, we went our separate ways. We're still in touch now, and it was a very positive separation. But what happened is that one of the things that it was a bit of a drawback is that because on the license they would be a 51% shareholder, it would mean when it came to borrowing or lending, finance, mortgages, anything around that space, credit cards as well, they would do the calculation based on my 49%, even if I was 100% shareholder owner and had all the decisions. So that really cut by half a lot of the potential that I had. So that was the principal reason why we decided to go our separate ways. When it comes to hiring people, now my company policy is to be very diverse. It's just a personal thing. You don't have to do it. But for a long time, I've been the only British person. I now have my COO who's British as well. But for a long time, we had every other nationality you can imagine. I mean, we even had we have a Nepalese driver, a Colombian nanny, and a Japanese photographer. I mean, when I say diverse, I'm saying we're ticking all the boxes. But that didn't have to be the case. I just felt that for the particular nationalities and cultures, I didn't really hire people based on nationality. I got them because of their talent. So I don't really care, where you are. And I think also you'll see a lot of the videos and the way that I raise my kids and my family, where my wife is from, and then passports we have, that I really believe in having a diverse work culture, because it's generally pretty interesting and it can also help your business. Now, don't get me wrong, there have been times where getting people from the region, in particular countries, not because of they're from that country, but because of I got a bad apple, it has severely hampered my business. But I have learned that is the cost of business, and you will also have the same challenges. But hopefully by watching these videos and learning from the mistakes that I made, you will be able to hire more wisely. This is just a couple of things that I've noticed hiring people, and now I'm fortunate to say that I have really a top tier group of people across my companies, and they're also people who've been with me for a long time. So I don't get involved day to day in setting up businesses. I have a team that does that for me, and it does it for my clients. I'm not a YouTuber that sits here every day in a bedroom talking about what I know. What I do know is how to run a business and to make sure that all of those businesses and the people within those different departments know exactly what they're doing, and the reporting structure. And above all, extremely above all, is making sure that the customer is always protected at all times and gets the best deal at the best price. Now, when it comes to setting up your businesses, I think we use a lot of my personal experiences, not just in the UAE, but overseas, because sometimes you have the same principles that you can follow regardless of whichever country you will use. Me now, I have my own personal lawyer, which really helps me a lot when it comes to setting up companies in different countries. Coming to the UAE, what would happen is when you start a business, you get an initial approval. That initial approval, for example, will take a few days. They might, depending on whichever business you would do, sometimes you need to show a deposit. So for example, if you have a property management company, you would have to provide a bond, and that bond would have to be a fixed amount of money. It doesn't have to be cash. It can be an asset which is valued at X. So I think for property management, it's like 2 million, 5 million dirhams, which is $500,000 or about, you could say $1.5 million. So you'd have to show this, and then you'd have to submit a name. Sometimes the name is already taken. You need to give other names. I usually tell people to come up with 3 names when they do this process. Then after that, the next thing is you probably want to get the initial approval. Then after you find the rental space or the space, the property that you bought, if you bought like me, and then you would connect that as the proof that you have the space to be able to accommodate the visas and therefore submit your application. At that point there, you are pretty much up and running. You need to open a bank account. I had a gentleman come in today from WEO. Now, I hear a lot about WEO. I haven't used WEO, but I have used a lot of the other banks in the region. I did another video which I talked about banking. I think it was about investment banking, private banking, corporate, retail, but my experiences of dealing with all different types of banking. But essentially, you want to get set up. Now, some banks have a good reputation, some bad. Some are actually better at retail and personal banking and not so good at corporate. So, but my experiences are usually a lot of the Abu Dhabi banks there seem to be pretty good, but I also know in Dubai, there's other good banks as well. I won't go into that today, but I would say that you really want to get a good relationship manager. So if there is the ability to increase the relationship rapport that you have through some kind of investment with them. So for example, move your personal with them, move your mortgage with them, company with them, do some investments. From experience, I would say that there's a bit more win-win. If you're just there and say, listen, I'm not going to do anything else with you. I just want you to be able to receive and pay out all my company salaries, payroll, receivables, what have you. Some of the banks, they just don't really give you that service. So that's another thing that I've noted. Typically, when you want to open a company in the UAE, you're largely looking at around $5,000-$6,000 upfront costs. And then it drops because obviously the first year, lots of the initial upfront costs, but it drops and then you're just doing it on a renewal basis. Then the rest really depends on the visas. But don't forget, when you're hiring people and you're giving them the visas, each visa has a validity period, which can be 2 to 3 years. But on top of this, you need to factor in as well that when you're hiring those people, you have to give them the salary. The salary is broken down into allowances, so like transport and accommodation. But on top of this, they would be entitled to end of service benefits. So you need to keep that in mind. Unfortunately, I've heard a lot of people who would hire people and never have enough money to pay them their end of service benefits. You also need to consider now that they have the holidays, public holidays, but most importantly is insurance, which is now mandatory. It wasn't always the case previously, but now it's mandatory. So you need to add that because it's mandatory as an employer to have that on top as well. So all of these things start to compound, but compare this to other parts of the world where it's probably 100 euros, 100 pounds to start the business, $100. But from that point onwards, the tax is progressive. It goes up depending on what you're making. In the UAE, corporate tax at 9% only really kicks in once you're generating a profit over $100,000. So then you're paying the 9% on everything thereafter. And again, you could have two companies if you really wanted to spread it around. There are also some costs that you can also set off against this, which would be, for example, company vehicles have depreciating, provided obviously that you're using it for company purposes. Then the second that you would have is, for example, expenditure. So restaurants and so on can be, and again, it has to be justified. You can also do this up to 50%. You could have your office rent, which is again, it could be a cost that could be offsettable. You can, what else can you do? I'd say that was probably the main things that you could justifiable expenses. A lot of people, then you have also, by the way, your salary, so you can pay yourself a salary. You don't want to be, I don't want to say in English, taking the P, but you don't want to be abusing that system because they will benchmark it against someone of a similar status in a similar industry. But there are things that if you own the property and you could rent it to yourself, that could be one thing. If you had the car, you could potentially rent yourself, but you can't abuse the system. The FTA is here, the Federal Tax Authority of the UAE is extremely strict, and you don't want to stay on the wrong side of this. And I think it's, largely speaking, it's still going through some teething programs as it's going. The good thing is that we happen to use our auditors, who are one of the very, very few who are extremely well regarded by the FTA. So I'm very fortunate to have found a gentleman like that. You probably would note that from a lot of my videos, I get access to a lot of very important people you wouldn't find normally, and that's purely because of the network that I built, and it did take me 15 years. So essentially, that is the next thing, which is auditing, which again, you haven't got a company, you've got to pay your license fees, and then you need to be audited as well, and then you need to pay your corporate tax. By and large, I think that is a beginner's guide to establishing yourself here. I might do one that is a little bit more in-depth or technical, but I think that already covers a lot of it. Again, I'm not the guy that, sells you companies. There's plenty of people that do that type of stuff. I'm here to be someone of experience who has not only built the business, but made a successful business. And so I'm probably at a different stage. I can bring in one of my team who will then be able to take you through the whole process of setting up the business. But I'm here largely to be able to help people to make as few mistakes as possible. The most important thing is get educated. There's a lot of resources out there, but I think I'm looking at this from a different perspective, which is how to really be successful at business. Other people will tell you how to set up a business. There's loads of options. By and large, there's some reputable free zones out there. You can do Sharjah, Ras Al Khaimah, Abu Dhabi has free zones as well. well. I think the main thing is that the UAE is really probably one of the simplest places to set up a businesses compared to definitely other companies I've set up. I did a article for GB News, which is the UK news channel, talking about why the UAE is a great country for me and my family and for my business. That's it for today. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. I'd look forward to some feedback regarding which are the best places to set up companies right now. Things are changing and they constantly change. So please let us know in the comments. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.